I'm like scratching my head thinking, where's the purpose come from? I mean, it's one thing to go and take as many photographs and edit those and, think about what I might, maybe I'll turn them into a book or do an exhibition or, I don't know. Can you fill 30 years with that? Two lifelong friends document and share their personal stories as they seek financial independence and to retire early. One reaches FIRE in 2020 during a global pandemic, inspiring the other to play catch up. This is Two Sides of FI. So we're talking about how scary it is to retire early.
Yeah, I was thinking about this recently, and it seemed like a fun topic for us because, we align primarily on the financial independence, right? The FI side of things. We don't talk too much about retire because I think neither of us are really sure what that means. But the more I thought about it, the concept I was thinking about was, what was I concerned about? What are you concerned about in leaving my primary source of income, right? That career that I had, for me, it was 23 years in biotech. For you, it is as a practicing architect, designing and building houses. And at some point, you're going to stop doing that. I already stopped doing the biotech thing. And there was a whole host of things I was worried about before I pulled the trigger. And there are still some things I worry about now in this RE stage of where I'm at.
Now that I'm starting to focus more on this and project forward to that time when I no longer need to take clients or make videos, I'm starting to really worry about losing the identity I've created through my job. And I was wondering from you, now that you're 10 or 11 months into this, what was the low moment of your retirement so far? Low point. Be honest. Ooh. Be honest.
I think the most challenging time for me probably came in the first few months. And, we were in our new house. We were settled. Those early chores were all done. So there was, kind of white space for me to fill. And at first, I was really enjoying it. I was cooking. I started the app development, kind of all that stuff, and I was getting a lot out of it. And then at some point, I realized I was just trying to jam stuff into that space. I was looking at taking on bigger consulting projects and, felt like I had to find the next thing I was going to do. And honestly, I think you're one of the people who caught onto it first. Maybe you have just the right amount of distance from me and also know me well enough to call it out. But, that whole idea that just trading time for, money essentially, right? Just falling back into default mode of I need to figure out how to earn again when the very point of getting here was to not have that pressure at all was a really big revelation. So there's a positive, right? I came out of that mode and I started turning down bigger consulting opportunities that came my way because I recognized that what I had worked hard to get to was the freedom to random walk through different ideas and passions and possibilities and fail or drop most of them. And maybe even all of them, but with the thought that, one of these things might turn out to be something really cool that I enjoy doing. But if I fill my time with other crap like I was doing, which was honestly starting to stress me out, which is stupid, but real, that would never happen. So, I don't think it lasted for a really long time. Maybe I struggled with it for a few weeks once I came to that realization. But, you and Lori both helped me kind of snap out of it.
That's exactly what I was expecting you to say, because that's exactly what I saw from the outside. And what I actually think it was you coming to grips with losing your identity, which was tied to working and earning. Like that's what you had done for 22 years or 23 years. And your identity was completely wrapped up like it is for nearly everybody that I know. And when that goes away, you realize what a big part of your life it took up. And it was actually really interesting to see you work through it. And that's not to say that you're done working through it. And it's
probably not.
Things aren't changing still, but man, it's so fun to watch as an outsider and as I kind of experience your retirement vicariously, project what my own future might feel like when I get to that position. But it's really something that I think everyone can relate to. Your job is who you are for much of your life. And this is about questioning that and reinventing that and trying to figure out, is there more to life than my job? And I think what it seems like you found is there's space for all these other things, and you don't know where it can lead. And I think that's kind of cool.
I would say that I was surprised, because I've always felt like, look, I landed in a line of work that I found very interesting and challenging and was personally rewarding, especially in recent years, right? Working on diagnostics for human disease, it was a very fulfilling trade to be in. And so I felt like I was going to step away from that having felt accomplished, lots of positive things, but that I was ready to set that behind me, that I was moving into something different. And sure, I would miss it. I would miss the people and the sense of accomplishment, but I never would have thought that the absence of that would drive those kinds of feelings. And that's naive, obviously. And so maybe it saves somebody 10% of that by thinking about it in advance. But I don't know. From talking to others who have towed this road, I think that's just a normal progression. Yes, we're talking about doing it earlier in life than traditional retirement age, and maybe that makes it weirder because you're less ready for it or less frustrated with the grind after, a lot longer than we spend in it, right? Sometimes, maybe even double the amount of time we spent in it, but it's real.
But maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't loss of identity. Maybe it was loss of sense of purpose. Maybe it was that, and I don't know if you've found purpose yet, or I actually don't know if that's important to you, but it would be important to me.
When I was volunteering at the vaccine clinic, something I was doing here once a week, I had these like crappy little admin jobs because I'm not a medical professional, right?
Yeah.
Used to be an EMT, but
Traffic
now I'm not. So I
directing
can't do anything medical. I was like legitimately directing traffic. Like, go here. This is where the observation tent is. This is how you fill out that form. Basic stuff that you could teach someone in 5 minutes.
Yep.
And so nobody made any assumptions about like my level of education and my training, right? I absolutely dress down. That's my MO because I'm a very casual person. So definitely nobody's going to assume anything about me by the way I dress, except that I'm a dirtbag.
Homeless.
But yeah, I'm homeless. But anyhow, like I would find people like over explaining things to me at the vaccine clinic, like making sure I got it. I'm like, got it. But like every so often, like something would come up and I would respond to it like my normal way. And I'm pretty well educated about COVID in particular. And I would respond like, just like it was a work conversation. They'd be like, oh, well, what kind of work do you do?
Well, that's nice, Jason.
Yeah.
Please step back in line.
Like, it's just, I don't know. It's like, it's a weird thing after so many years of, having a certain level of accomplishment and expectations around that in the workplace based on your level and based on your education, that like you're going to respond in a certain way and I can ask you questions in a certain way because we all have these same givens. And now that I don't work in biotech anymore and I'm not surrounded by people who have those expectations, it's like, well, who's this fool?
Exactly. Is this the reason why you like
identity change?
Is this why you boss me around so much in this project?
Is that how this is working? It's not how I felt about it at all. Well, how about you? I mean, especially with your own business that you have built, blood, sweat, and tears, 8 years plus, I think it is, to get you to this point of accomplishment from an architecture standpoint as well as a content creation standpoint. How do you feel about identity and purpose and how that's wrapped up in that?
I mean, to me, it feels a little bit more mobile than what you have. I mean, I could take this and do it almost anywhere. Much of what I do. And I could continue to say teach. And I've thought about those things. Like there are probably certain things I just would never give up about doing this, but there is that I fear stepping into retirement that I won't be able to stop working because like you, it's like ordering the day and it's this process for making things and maybe I'll call it something else, but maybe I will still work, and I know Laura has some very definite opinions and thoughts on that. It'll be interesting to get both of our spouses on this.
Definitely.
But yeah, a lot of my identity is tied up in this, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately, especially with respect to, this is an asset I created and my kids don't want it. Like a lot of family businesses, the kids will graduate and step up into it. My kids have no interest in this, and I have no expectation that they would. But it feels silly and stupid to have created this thing and then just walk away from it. So I'm really conflicted. I don't know what to do with it. I don't. It's not an asset I would really want to sell necessarily. It's not an asset that I think is easy to value, but there's value there. And so,
of course there is.
I guess as I think through what it means to me from a personal level, I'd be really sad to just shutter this altogether. It would be really hard for me to take that final walk out of the office, like that image that you sent me, like last day at the office. So I feel like maybe this is a glide path rather than a cliff that I'm jumping off, but I just don't know. And I'm also someone who's now done this long enough that I'm comfortable kind of shaping it into something else. Well, I can, change the course and make it something new, and maybe make it something that, is more open to my friends, like you and Lori and my wife, and, that it's more just a place for people to create and use as they see fit. Like to me, it's just interesting to think about a different life beyond what it is right now. And I've always seen this as a workshop. Like it's a place where you make things, but I've never put any hard bounds on what I make here. Sometimes it's architecture, sometimes it's prints, sometimes it's models, sometimes it's, a band playing in here. And I like that idea, and I'd never want to see it not be that. I guess I wouldn't turn into a garage probably. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
but I'll tell you, I'll sign up to do a sabbatical at your workshop, and I work silently. Something you've stated before that I've heard, and I don't know how many other people have, you have a view on kind of, I don't know how you put it, like what you want to get out of life or where you find value. And
success
there are three
metrics.
Things. Could you explain the kind of the way you look at the world and the three things that you look for?
So this has been this ordering principle that I've established for the business since kind of day one. So my three metrics of success are freedom. So freedom to do what I choose each day, purpose, something driving me forward, and relationships, which is, time to spend with family and friends. And, as I look at those three things, okay, freedom to do what I choose. Obviously, financial independence optimizes for that over and above almost everything else, I think. Because
big time.
Yeah. And then we get to purpose, and I'm like scratching my head thinking, where does the purpose come from? And I mean, it's one thing to go and take as many photographs and edit those and, think about what I might, maybe I'll turn them into a book or do an exhibition, or, I don't know. Can you fill 30 years with that? Enough?
No, not just that. No, not just that. But you're somebody who, like us, really loves travel. And I know that you're somebody who has always felt like every other working person in the world, that there's not nearly enough time to spend on travel, and schedules have to line up, and the seasonality, never mind the cost. And so I know travel is a big part of your post-fire plans, just like it is ours.
Yeah. And then but speaking of that, you add in this kind of nomadic lifestyle that we're contemplating, whether that's in a van or a boat or who knows what. And then
submarine.
You've left your drug sub, man. That would be awesome.
High risk, but potentially high reward.
You're leaving your friends and family, established circles of relationships. And we can get on a plane, we can drive to whatever, but it's still, you're now sort of plucking yourself out of this life that you've created that says, this makes me feel successful. So either I need to reinvent those metrics for success, which they've served me so well.
Sure.
I have a hard time just jettisoning those.
I don't think you should.
Or I have to rethink how I create purpose in my life, which is what I want to ask you about. And how do I start establishing new circles of friends, or finding new ways to connect with, friends and family when you're a nomad. So you've been 11 months out of the workplace. Obviously you've been in lockdown here, so you've probably spent more time at home than you would normally choose to, but
absolutely,
like, you're really close to family now and your spouse, right? Proximal, same space. How does what does that look like? Because that's a concern of mine. Like, okay,
Yeah.
my wife is my best friend, as it should be.
Yeah, likewise.
But you gotta have external friend networks that you connect with, and what does that mean if you're traveling, you're living this nomadic life, and like we were just fast forwarding into the future a little bit, saying, hey, what if we got this, those cool little Sprinter vans and did a conversion of it, and then I'm just picturing living like sandwiched next to my wife, like 24/7 driving across the country. I'm like, is that a good thing? How have you handled that? And like, do you guys have certain boundaries that you draw, husband and wife? Like, okay, I got to get out of the house, or we have to be apart for 20 hours a week. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be that strict, but I just wonder how you've dealt with that.
Yeah. And that's certainly going to differ by person, but it certainly was an adjustment for both of us having, me be around so often.
Cause you used to travel a lot.
I did. I traveled a lot. And maybe one sort of benefit is that I worked remotely for 3 months during the COVID lockdown between when it started in early March and when I left my job in early June.
It's like trial balloon
last year.
Yeah.
What's that?
It was like a trial balloon then.
Yeah, it was a little trial, right? I think we figured out that there are areas where we can irritate each other, and I'm somebody who is very irritable, and Lori really isn't. And I
no
definitely
kidding.
know. Yeah, I know. It takes one to know one. How about that? But yeah, I was basically interrupting a routine that had been in place for a long time, right? Lori starts her day a certain way, cleans in a certain way, and all, does all these things. And, I typically would leave for work before my wife and daughter got up in the morning.
Right.
And I would get home around dinner time, like most people. And so there's a whole lot of things that were happening that were outside my influence that now I'm in the middle of. And so I'm sure they had to get more used to me being around. It was early on after we moved and we finally felt settled that a lot of these emotions started to really set in. And that's probably not surprising, right? We were so preoccupied with moving and packing and unpacking and all that stuff. But then after a few weeks, it set in. All those early chores were done, and now you're left to your devices to kind of work through stuff. And I know that I was probably being pretty irritating in a lot of ways. And, and graciously, I think Lori let that go.
Uh-huh.
But at some point, I realized that we are spending all this time together. I have certain expectations and had control over my life in my office and at work that is different than at home, and I might have unrealistic expectations about what quiet should look like and what have you. But I honestly, it for us at least, and you should absolutely get her opinion. I think that's been great. I don't think we get on each other's nerves. She definitely doesn't get on my nerves. I might get on her nerves. It's gone well. So
I'll tell you, Laura.
I feel confident about, if we got stuck in a tiny house, which is not one of our plans, but if we did, I think we'd be okay. We would need our outdoors time from each other sometimes, but honestly, I feel like it would go okay. So tell me about that. Tell me about that concern of yours. Is it something you just haven't had to do? Is it because you are so used to working in a certain way? I don't know. Let me know.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's on your mind.
You already know that I'm really hard to work with. And like, can you imagine sharing this studio space with me? So when we went into lockdown and Laura had to work from home, I was like, oh, you should work in the studio. We got an extra standing desk here. And, so of course she moved in and I was like, oh my God, what did I sign myself up for?
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it's because she's in meetings 100% of the day.
Yeah.
And I need quiet, creative time. Like, so yes. I'm like you in that respect. And also this studio has, although she helped finance it, obviously, it's felt like my own kind of creative space here.
Sure.
And territory that I had staked as my own, and then sharing it, it starts to make you question, like, okay, well, we're spending all this time, we're basically spending the whole day together, even though we're not like interacting necessarily in the same way a husband and wife would interact. But yeah, it gives me pause. And I know it gives her pause too, because she's like, oh, we're not going to hang out together like all the time in retirement, right?
Well, I mean, and that's an excellent point, right? And I think I have talked to people who have struggled with that, because you do need your separate time, and you need your time together. You need your time with your own friends. You need time with your shared friends. It's a balance.
Yeah.
right? I don't think that's so weird.
No, it's not.
I'm so jealous of your studio though, because of the way I work. I've just had an office with a door for
Yeah.
so many years of my work life that you take that for granted. And now my office is an open area outside the kitchen.
Right. Oh.
And so no matter what's happening, it's bothering me.
Yeah, right.
I know that's
Hey,
on
that
me,
little
though.
shed, man.
Dude, that shed, that Dr. Cody's meth shed behind my house, that you would just burst into flames the summer if you were in that shed.
You just have to insulate it.
I don't think those ventilated, those holes I drilled in it and put the grates over are really going to be enough.
You should have dug a hole in the ground, man. That's why desert dwelling is all about, making shade.
Hey, man, I took emergency preparedness or wilderness survival merit badges. I'm sure I could work something out.
You know what you could do? Just get another shed, put it next to it, and then put a little roof over it, and it's like a dog trot, man. It's natural air conditioning. I'm serious.
I'll have you design that.
2 meth sheds are better than 1.
Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about the emotional side of this thing, but
we have
the financial side introduces obvious worries. There's sequence of return risk, which we've touched on a little bit. Is the portfolio I've designed actually going to support me? There's healthcare, whatever crises that may happen. Like, what are you worried about with respect to that? Is there a recurring concern of yours? Or are you just so confident in your plan that you're not worried about anything?
Yeah, I'm definitely somebody who can at times hold 2 opposing ideas in their head. I don't think it's quite the level of cognitive dissonance, but I definitely can feel confident in the plan and felt like we characterized it really well. And we budgeted for more than a year before I stopped getting that paycheck. But on the same note, I think it's a normal human emotion to do lots of what ifs, and the other thing I think about is, we're doing fine on our budget, but Lori is also making a little bit of part-time money. Now, it's not a lot, but it is something, and we spend it. It's not like we're banking all that money. We do bank a little bit of it, kind of, repopulates the, vacation fund a little more and things like that. But, we talk about the slush fund. That's legitimately what I call it in the budget, because Lori's kind of work-related income pays for some fun stuff, even beyond what's in the budget, right? I have a line item in my budget for like beer and wine and going out to restaurants, all that stuff. But when we go over that, and especially living in wine country, that definitely happens here. We just use that income that she makes. And so it does give me pause to say, well, if that suddenly went away, if she decided she didn't want to tutor anymore, and I definitely didn't want to do any consulting whatsoever anymore, okay, then now we just have our normal draw. And yes, that draw right now is below our target withdrawal rate just because of market performance, but I don't want to up my withdrawal rate either, because we need to be conservative, right, when we're thinking about sequence of return risk in these first 5 to 10 years. So it's some people would tell me that's a silly thing to worry about, because we can obviously cut out the excess stuff, even beyond our budgeted excess stuff,
especially given that how much the optics you have on it. I feel like your finger's just on the pulse of what's happening so often that any course correction you'd have to make would be so minor as to be not noticeable. And
I'm not saying that it is like a logical thing to go, a rational thing to go to. But like you, we feel like we worked hard to get to this point. We want to have the flexibility to spend, outside of our budget sometimes. And of course you have it, right? Withdrawal rate is all about target and average and, being sensible most of the time and underspending where you could so that you can spend more when you want to. Yeah. And so I don't want to scare anybody with the thought that, well, it's got to be so tightly controlled, because we didn't take a lean fire approach.
Yeah. That's why, right? Yeah.
Right. And that's why. Yeah. But it's still something that gets in your head. And I know I'm right that you're going to feel the same way, because you clearly think about and box these numbers, I think, in a similar way. Yes, you don't love budgeting, but does that make sense? Do you project yourself worrying about that?
So my concern lies in this idea, and maybe a lot of people can relate to this who are hyper saving right now. It's easy to play the game of saving. It's much more difficult to play the game of spending.
100%.
For me personally. And Laura and I haven't talked much about that, but I love saving.
Yeah.
Like,
I did
it's
too.
Totally addicting to me right now.
Yeah, it's a game.
It's a game. And I worry about being able to spend in a way that's going to make our life fun and comfortable, so that I don't hyper focus on some little piece of minutia. We've talked about this before, that I focus on these little tiny expenditures, and it all adds up to relatively
the coffee at Roscoe's.
Right. It adds up to not much, but I think that change in mindset when I go from, okay, we hit the number, and, to now we have to start spending it down. I worry about what that looks like. That's an unknown for me. And I don't know. I should probably talk with Laura about that too, but I also know that I'm going to continue to earn. So that's, you and I have talked about that a little bit, that it's almost this built-in contingency that I'm not planning on in the budget, which I am doing.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a big step.
Actually Laura's doing it because I think she started when last time when we were talking about housing, I was like, yeah, we really ought to come to terms with this like really soon. And
set your ceiling.
Yeah. And it was actually relatively easy to pay for that with passive income. So,
okay,
but I don't know if that's a good strategy or a bad strategy, but it is one way that we rationalized it. And so it maybe makes me, if nothing else, it makes me do a little more planning right now so that I can have some things in place that I know will cover that expense. But the saving to spending transition, I have to believe people grapple with in that transition zone.
Yeah.
Did you?
Maybe not as much as I thought I would, because I did think about it a lot, and I did talk to some people about it. And I don't know that this goes for everyone, but the people I spoke with seem to suggest that takes time. Yeah. Once you've gone, the year has kind of cycled around 3, 4, 5 times. You're very accustomed to this. This is going to work. Yes, there are bad years, there are good years for the market, all of that, but you're going to get used to the fact that you're drawing down.
Well, I would think
have a good plan, you're going to get more comfortable with it over time.
I would think 5 years is kind of the sequence of return risk threshold, right? If it
most people,
if it survives in a certain state for the first 5 years, you're pretty well guaranteed of like making the rest of it work, right? Is that what you project? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a more conservative view is 10 years.
Oh, really?
But yeah, there are some people who will say 10 years. Most people say 5.
Oh, what do you say?
I'm not trying to make you worry. I usually say 5 to 10 years because that's a hedge. It's a hedge. But, honestly, Eric, one of the things that I think made it way easier to make the transition from saving to,
I know what you're going to say,
spending is market performance.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm not
you're going to say the bucket thing.
No, I'm not. That helps. That's a buffer.
Because I hate that.
But I'm not somebody. I'm sorry you hate it. I'm not somebody that has ever watched the market on a daily basis, right? And I think that's a very good habit to get out of if it is your habit.
Oh, it's my habit.
Any guidance?
It's my habit.
Don't do that after you start withdrawing, because little bumps that you might have gotten excited about when you were saving could affect you in completely the opposite way.
Yeah,
now, I know some people who are post-fire. This is the whole reason they keep dry powder around, right?
Yeah.
They have some money that they retained for this purpose as part of their accumulation plan, or they take their passive income for those who have it and they set it aside. Or instead of maybe they don't put quite as much in there when they think about their vacation fund, they also just kind of have some money that they think of as for investment. And when those downturns come, they continue to invest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to approach it. But I haven't had to deal with a big downturn yet, right? The net upturn since I left is huge.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So that's only made me feel better about a downturn that I know will come. And so I think the good news is been saving long enough that we've weathered some pretty tough downturns, and I've seen what happens when you get out the other side and how the market recovers. So I know that to be the case, but do I worry that when it happens, I'm going to internalize it? Yeah, absolutely.
And we're kind of in this sandwich zone where our parents are older and, you know, they're aging and there's all sorts of concerns that come along with that. And then you have your kids who are aging up, and both parties still kind of need you. And you may or may not have financial responsibilities with respect to those. How have you built that into your budget at all? Any kind of slush fund for that? Or you just say, hey, it's something unpredictable, I can't predict it, I'll react to it when the time comes? Or how does that work?
I'm going to call it somewhere in between those two things. Because I have always believed in maintaining emergency funds. And it used to be, you know, when I was working, I followed the, you know, 3 to 6 months of expenses rule. I always did 6 months because of the level I was working at. And it's not like I can just, flip a coin and I've got another job. Yeah. Got to find something appropriate. So I carried that into this next phase of life. And, you know, so we have a pool of money that basically equates to 6 months of expenses that I keep in cash in a savings account, that should we have some unusual expense for any reason, we don't have to change our normal strategy of our operating account and, you know, have to liquidate something for, you know, anything but an outrageously high expense.
So it's a buffer, yes, but it's not.
It's a buffer.
Naturally, can't account for any kind of crisis that may come up. I mean, I'm just thinking about.
Are you thinking about it in your own budget? Is that something you have kind of allotments made for? Or?
No, but I was going through the list of concerns and I was like, okay, well, what if one of my kids needed us for something? You know, sure, they needed to come back home and we needed to do some you know, short-term support or maybe longer-term support. What would that look like? Because, yeah, and I hadn't really planned on it in the budget, and I'm not sure how to treat that necessarily.
Well, I think it's another reason, Eric, that this idea of thinking about the budget, you know, obviously at different levels of granularity over time, thinking about the budget earlier rather than later, yeah, is so useful, because you're going to keep coming up with things. You talk to different people, you encounter whatever the latest little thing is in your everyday life. You're like, oh yeah, I got to account for that too. And most of those are going to be innocuous. They're not going to be big, scary things, but every so often you're going to think of something like, oh yeah, what if I have to do that? And I think but you're right. You can't plan for every contingency, but putting buffer in there, you know, allocating emergency funds, you're going to be that much better off and not fall into the situation where you have to go find a job to deal with this unexpected expense.
You know, if I went through I'm a natural worrier. I am so anxious about things. And if I went through all the tick boxes of all the things I was worried about, oh my God, I'd never step into this. So at some level, I just have to say, we'll react to it when or if the time comes. And I guess this idea of building some kind of contingency into the whole system helps, but I don't know.
So something we didn't talk about yet, that I thought about, you know, as something that might not happen until I stop working, was to have regret about that decision, right? Yeah. You know, I worked to get the career to this point, and to the point you just made, like stepping away and leaving it behind, I knew would be weird, but I did worry that I might get this feeling of regret, like that was the wrong decision. You know, many people achieve financial independence and keep working because they love their job. Right. And you'll see this constantly on Reddit and on forums. And that's great, right? They want to keep working, like super. I decided I didn't. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that a month, 6 months, a year later, I might not say, oh, well, what have I done, right? That was my purpose. I loved it enough. Maybe there was a way to do that differently, and that I would still want to do it and have this life that we've set out for ourselves. I'm happy to say that it didn't happen.
But you were worried about it.
I was. Yeah. I was totally worried about it. And,
it's legitimate.
You know, I started questioning it when I was looking at taking on consulting. Like, am I doing this because I'm filling a void of desire, right? I miss the work. And I was really glad, at least, and again, it's only year one, to find that, no, that wasn't it. I was trying to fill space.
How'd you know that?
I knew how to do.
How could you make that distinction?
Talking to people about it and having them question my motivations about doing that. You know, you and Lori primarily. It's not something I just sort of aired to anybody I found on the street. But, just thinking through it. Honestly, I've told you this before. Taking daily walks, especially once I stopped listening to books on my walks.
Long walks
doing
on the
hikes,
beach with myself.
Doing walks. Thinking about that stuff and writing it down. The most basic like tools we have to deal with our thoughts.
So that helps you process it.
And I'm not someone that enjoys that type, has historically enjoyed that type of journaling, but writing it on a blog and putting it out there for maybe 5 people to read, whoever read it, no matter who read it, I got those emotions out and wrote them down and reread them and realized this is why I felt certain ways and this is what was underlying it, and this is what I would do about it. And it sounds like the most simplistic crap in the world, but it's reality. That's how I felt. So,
and you also took a few of those consulting jobs, right? Or no?
I did, but only really short-term stuff. That was kind of my the happy medium I found. Like,
because you did say that, like, well, I'll never know unless I try it.
Unless I try it.
And so
but I never tried a big commitment because honestly, Eric, the conversations you and I had about it, that I continued on with Lori, I realized that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to be under someone else's timeline anymore, above all.
Totally.
Right? Like committing to even like a week's worth of 40 hours of consulting over a couple of weeks, because I certainly wouldn't take on 40 hours in a week, felt bad. Like I would not, I'd be able to like roughly control my time. Like, yeah, okay, they're going to have a deliverable in 2 weeks. I can divide that time up however I want, but I didn't want that kind of commitment.
Did you make a matrix of importance factors or something? A weighted matrix? No, I'm bummed.
No, there's no spreadsheet. It's a weird thing getting used to like total freedom and suddenly having anything scheduled. Lori and I just talked about this yesterday. And this is going to come across as completely tone deaf, just like it did when I said it to her. I was annoyed about having to do both the drop-offs and the pickups at school because we live, just far away enough that it's a little far for a walk from school, and it's been really hot. So our daughter has not wanted to ride her bike to school. She wants to get dropped off, like not ride a bike for half an hour or 25 minutes in the hot weather. And I'm just like, this is messing with my schedule. Like, I like my time to be free. And Lori rightfully is like, dude, I drove her to school every day for years.
Pretty
like,
tone deaf, yeah.
You don't get to, and I think I might have had the presence to even say like, I know this is a small thing, but I probably didn't. I probably. But it's also like I was creating the problem. Like I get to school a little too early to pick her up because I don't want to sit in the traffic in the circle with all the other fools.
Yep.
But I solved that problem. I got her to meet me around the corner at a park, so now I don't have to sit in the traffic with all the fools. So, look, I'm solving the problem.
Pretty soon, you just got like start parking further and further away. She'll just have to walk all the way home, like halfway up the hill.
Yeah, I'll tell her that today. We'll see how that goes.
Keep walking. All right, we done recording or what?
Yeah, I think so.